You're listening to Pushing the Odds on SB Nation Radio.
And on SBNationRadio.com.
Live from the CG Sportsbook inside the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas. Powered by O'Reilly Auto Parts and Quicken Loans. Here's your host, Matt Perrault.
Well, Teddy Atlas had to reschedule and cancel this appearance, so we're really happy that Michael Montero has been kind enough to jump in here, writer for the Ring Magazine, Boxing Monthly Mag on the Progressive Insurance Hotline. Michael, Matt Perrault, how are you?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Okay, so the video that Anthony Joshua put out this week while he was still in New York, essentially confirming that they're going to exercise the rematch clause with Andy Ruiz. But what do you make of this conspiracy theory, the weird inside sources? I have sources. I've heard this about the current camp or what happened with Anthony Joshua. Do you think he was hurt going into that fight?
You know, it's hard to say, Matt. I mean, anytime you see a major upset like this in boxing, the conspiracy theories run amok. I mean, this reminds me of when Vladimir Klitschko lost to Lehman Brewster, and that goes back maybe, 15 years. But all the boxing chat rooms, they were really hot. This was, just before Twitter took over. They were running crazy with all kinds of conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And we see it almost all the time when there's a big upset like this. So it doesn't surprise me. Now, let me be clear about something, because I've been tweeting about this all week. And I've kind of had a little fun trolling some of it. But if Anthony Joshua was legitimately knocked out, not knocked down, but knocked out, in preparation for this fight, and then the next day he's right back into training, right back into sparring, that's a violation of protocol. That's unethical, and that should not have happened. However, I have not heard from any reliable sources that took place. I've seen it a million times just hanging out in gyms, guys getting clipped, buzzed, even dropped in sparring, getting their butt handed to them basically in preparation for a fight. James Toney, one of the great fighters of the last generation, was notorious for that. He would enter camp and just get his butt handed to him, and that is how he prepared for fights. So we've seen it a million times. If a guy gets dropped in sparring, yeah, maybe that does something to him mentally, emotionally, but there's a lot of fighters out there, some of the all-time greats, who were hurt in sparring, but used that as motivation, hey, maybe I need to tighten up and take this a little more seriously to get better prepared. So regardless, if Anthony Joshua was hurt, buzzed, dropped, whatever in camp, that shouldn't take anything away from what Andy Ruiz did last Saturday. He clearly had the better game plan. He buzzed Joshua and dropped him in the third round with a shot that AJ didn't see coming, got him on the temple, and that threw off his equilibrium, his legs. He was not the same after that. That's it. That's it.
What's interesting about the post-fight about Joshua is that not only did he lose, but he didn't act surprised that he lost. And that, I think, is what's burning the conspiracy fire, Michael, is the fact that, at least from a U.S. audience perspective, we are used to watching fighters, athletes be devastated in defeat. And Joshua was not devastated. In fact, I don't think he's even devastated now in defeat. He's taking it kind of just very normally, in a lot of ways, in a very healthy way, as to, I'm not wrapped up, my whole world's not wrapped up in my boxing career. I'm a person, I'm not a boxer. But that's not what we're used to here in America. How do you read the way he took pictures with Ruiz in the ring? He was smiling. His interviews in the ring after the fight were very complimentary and not like a guy who just was embarrassed in front of the world. What do you make of the way Joshua was handling the loss?
Matt, there's just a difference in culture with American fighters versus fighters from other parts of the world. And again, I'll go back to the Klitschko brothers, this time Vitaly Klitschko. He lost his first professional loss was against an American, Chris Bird, in which he was dominating the fight, hurt his shoulder, and simply stopped. He just quit on his stool. And that shocked American fans. And I believe that fight was on HBO, and the commentary crew at HBO just slammed the hell out of Vitaly Klitschko for that. And Vitaly looked at it like, I can't fight, guys. My shoulder's hurt. And then later on when he fought Lennox Lewis, he proved his heart, that he had crazy, crazy heart, right? So there's just a different mentality with fighters in different parts of the world. In America, our fighters seem to go into the ring or into the cage or whatever it is with the mentality of, you got to die to get me out of there. And that seems to be something we see from fighters from Mexico, or American fighters of Mexican heritage, American fighters of Italian heritage, right? We see different cultures kind of have that mentality. And Anthony Joshua kind of looked at it like a sportsman type of mentality, right? Like an NBA player. We lost this game. We'll be back tomorrow to play the next game. That's kind of how he reacted. And I think that shocks some American fans, but that's just a difference culturally. And I've seen that. Look, Lennox Lewis was from the UK. He lost fights, and he kind of behaved the same way. It's just a different culture. But then also, let me quickly add this. He was concussed. He was dropped 4 times. You can't judge a guy for how he acts minutes after a fight in which he's been hurt, because everybody reacts differently to being hurt. So I think it's unfair, and we live in the social media age where people will take a 3-second GIF and put it on loop and blast it all over social media and selectively edit it and say, look at this, it doesn't look right, something's going on here. Just quit the Oliver Stone crap. The guy got beat, and he owned up to it like a professional, and they're going right back into the rematch, and I think that's the right play here.
Just to not push back too hard on it, but I agree with you that after the fight's over, but what do you make of the video that came out yesterday, where the 4.5-minute video where he's saying pretty much the same exact things as he said in the ring about what happened, saying, I don't get too highs on my highs, I don't get too lows on my lows, I got beat, that's what happened, away we go, versus talking about the fact that, you would, if you have a video like that, there's not a lot of anger, or not a lot, like take Deontay Wilder, for instance, how American fight fans view a dude from Alabama who talked about killing people in the ring. There's just a very big juxtaposition between these two guys that I think people are having a tough time understanding. I think you're totally right about culturally, fighters are very, very different. But can you see why people are questioning Joshua, given what we're used to?
Of course. And this is something, I've been talking about this on my podcast every week for a while now. And I've talked about it on multiple platforms. This is a similar dynamic to what we saw back in the late 80s into the early 90s with Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. It's a very similar dynamic where Mike Tyson was very bombastic. He talked all kinds of trash. He talked about killing people, just all kinds of stuff, right? And Evander Holyfield was this quiet country boy who let his fighting do the talking. And that's kind of what we see here. Vladimir Klitschko, the last great heavyweight champion. Right now, we don't have a heavyweight champion. We have heavyweight titleists. Nobody, clarified themselves as the guy. The last guy was Vladimir Klitschko, and before him, it was Lennox Lewis. And both of those guys were mild-mannered. They looked at boxing like chess. And that drove some American fans and some Americans, like the mainstream sports media here, kind of nuts, because they want to see a guy like Deontay Wilder. To Wilder's credit, because he really, in real life, is a quiet, sweet country boy. He's been putting on this act for the last year or so to promote himself, and it's working. So props to him for that. But I don't know, there just seems to be this interesting dynamic with American sports fans and sports media of what they want to see and hear, especially with a heavyweight boxer. And AJ's just not going to play into that.
So let's go and talk about DAZN for a second. And that's one of the conspiracy theories that I kind of thought was a little bit funny about. It was orchestrated by Eddie Hearns, and it was a way of helping DAZN with when it comes to the future. But in your opinion, was the loss for Joshua a good thing or a bad thing for the new broadcast platform?
It really depends on how you look at it, Matt. I mean, the biggest fight that was building up was a fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, both being undefeated, building up, let's say, for the next year or two. They were on a collision course to meet late next year, possibly early 2021, and that was going to be like a cross-network, cross-platform kind of thing, like we saw with Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. So that was the biggest money fight, okay? And for the conspiracy theorist people to think that DAZN and Eddie Hearn orchestrated this elaborate scheme to drop Anthony Joshua 4 times after almost knocking out Andy Ruiz to lose tens of millions of dollars in the long run, it just doesn't make sense. However, having said all that, I do think that this is the first time DAZN is getting mainstream eyes, from the mainstream sports media in America. The next day, and really the next few days, I've seen this fight, highlights of it, on every single platform, every single network, even non-sports networks like CNN and Fox are covering this. So DAZN just got millions in free advertising. But to set it up elaborately this way, it just doesn't make sense. If you were going to do some sort of conspiracy, well, let it go to a decision and have it go to the scorecards and have a robbery. That's like the classic, conspiracy theory, like a Canelo Golovkin won, for instance, something like that. But in this case, nobody in their right mind believes that a rematch between Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua is more marketable and makes more money than the eventual fight we were going to get between Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. It doesn't. It's a fraction of the money. On top of all that, Deontay Wilder turned down a $100 million contract offer from DAZN earlier this year. So it just doesn't add up. It doesn't hold water, in my opinion.
How much money will Andy Ruiz make, in your opinion, for the rematch? He's the A side, right? He should make more money. I doubt he will, but shouldn't he?
He is, well, it depends what you mean by A side. As far as marketability and branding, he's still going to be the financial B side. And that's just the reality of the situation. However, he has all the hardware. He's coming in with all the titles. So he's going to make about triple what he made for this fight. It's going to be in the 8 figures. And when you throw in some of the foreign TV rights money and everything, Mexican TV is going to be way bigger for the rematch than it was for the first fight. Endorsements, I'm sure Snickers will jump in there to an endorsement. He's going to make a ton of money. It could be over $20 million.
Michael Montero, Ring Magazine, joining us here at Pushing the Odds. I'll get you out of here on this. This has been, since we talk about Twitter beefs and whatnot, this fighter, Andy Ruiz, was born in California. What are we doing saying he's the first Mexican heavyweight champion? He's not Mexican. He's Mexican-American. Where did this come from where I'm doing it for Mexico?
Well, you're stepping in it now, Matt. You got to be careful. This is a very sensitive subject. I lived in Los Angeles for a decade, which is about 50% Hispanic, the population there. They're close proximity to Mexico, and there's different ways of looking at this, okay? So I fully agree with you, and what we're saying isn't untrue. Andy Ruiz was born in America. His nationality is American, but his parents are from Mexico. He has plenty of family relations there. He goes down there very often, and a lot of his early training and even much of his amateur career was spent down in Mexico. Per the Mexican Constitution, if your parents are from Mexico, you're Mexican. So there's this kind of fuzzy gray area, and then you get into all the social stuff and political stuff, and we're in this highly politicized times. So, look, I understand that there are some people looking at Andy Ruiz and some of his fans saying, I'm a Mexican, I'm the first Mexican champion, and that may offend some Americans because they're looking at him saying, hey, come on. You benefited from the American educational system. You grew up here. You graduated in high school in America, for Christ's sake. You're American. However, I can understand where many Mexican Americans and folks in Mexico are saying, look, this guy's parents are from Mexico. He's proud of his Mexican heritage, his Mexican roots. Let him rep that. What's the big deal? We had fighters like Irish Mickey Ward. Mickey Ward is from America, but he called himself Irish Mickey Ward. We've seen plenty of other fighters.
Wait. I'm from Boston, so I'm half Italian. My great grandparents are from Italy, right? Mickey Ward is from where I'm from. I'm from Andover, Mass. He's from Lowell, Massachusetts. Towns next to. He didn't say I was the first Irish heavy or middleweight champion. He just said it was his nickname. I have no problem he wants to associate with Mexico.
I totally, Matt. I get it. Look, I'm Italian and Eastern European. Okay, so my grandparents were immigrants too. So I totally understand where you're coming from in this. And look, if I were Team Andy Ruiz, I would advise him to make a statement very quickly, trying to placate at least to Middle America, saying, look, I'm proud of being from America. I'm American nationality, but my heritage and my culture is Mexican. So you and I are what, second generation, third generation? He's first generation. It is a little bit different. But I totally understand. And look, I can see both sides of this argument. I think both extremes of the argument are going a little too far. I think both sides need to do less yelling and more listening. But
right. I agree.
Which we could all use a lot more of in our political discourse in this country.
True.
But this is a touchy subject, bro. I mean, what you have going on right now with the wall and things at the border, it's a very touchy one, and you got to be careful the way you speak on it. But, yes, I would advise Andy Ruiz to come out and just talk about being proud of your Mexican heritage, but also saying, hey, I'm also proud that I'm from America.
Right.
That's what I would do if I were on his team, but I'm not on his team.
Right.
So,
I hear you.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. I agree. I'm out of time. Michael, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you coming on today.
No, thanks for having me on. Let's do it again, man.
Absolutely. That's Michael Montero from Ring Magazine.